I want you to do a little mental exercise with me. Just picture your bedroom.
Okay.
You open your closet, and imagine you are packing a suitcase for a business trip.
Right, a standard trip.
A standard run nothing fancy, let's say 10 days. You know the drill. You throw in a couple of changes of clothes, maybe 3 pairs of socks, a paperback you've been meaning to finish, your toiletries.
Yep, the usual.
You kiss your family goodbye, you lock the front door, and you fully, completely expect to be sleeping in your own bed again next weekend.
It's a routine, we all know.
Yeah.
It's manageable, it's predictable.
Exactly. Now, I want you to imagine that through a series of, let's say, mechanical failures, safety red lines, and just total logistical nightmares, that 10-day trip stretches. And it stretches. And you end up watching the seasons change on Earth from a window about the size of a dinner plate.
Until you have been gone for 286 days.
That is the staggering math we are dealing with today. 10 days versus 286. We are looking at the saga of astronaut Sunita Williams and the Boeing Starliner test flight.
I mean, it's a scenario that sounds like the plot of a survival thriller.
Right.
Something Hollywood would cook up with dramatic music. But for Sunita Williams and her commander, Butch Wilmore, this was their lived reality for nearly a year on the International Space Station.
And we have a phenomenal source for this deep dive. We aren't just piecing this together from press releases.
No, this is the good stuff.
We are breaking down an extensive, unfiltered, and deeply personal interview Sunita Williams gave to Raj Shamani. And I have to say, what struck me immediately about this conversation is that it completely dismantles the headlines we saw all last year. You know the ones I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Stranded,
Hopeless.
lost in space. The media loves a disaster narrative.
Right. But when you actually listen to Williams, you don't hear a victim. You don't hear someone panicking. You hear a masterclass in compartmentalization, in technical problem solving, and frankly, a very different perspective on what it means to be stuck.
And that is the core of what we need to unpack today, because the headline, "Stuck in Space," is easy to write. It gets clicks. But the reality involves orbital mechanics, flight rule violations, the sensory overload of living inside a noisy machine, and the psychological tool set required to handle that kind of radical uncertainty.
So let's start at the beginning. The catalyst. The mission itself. This was the Boeing Starliner crew flight test. It was supposed to be a shakeout cruise. Right? Launch, dock, stay for a week or so, come home, a final exam for the spacecraft.
Exactly. Think of it like a sea trial for a new ship. You take it out, you run the engines hard, you check all the systems, and then you bring it back to port. It's supposed to be routine, but, you know, rigorous.
But like a lot of final exams, things went wrong.
They did. And the narrative often just glosses over what actually failed. It wasn't just some vague engine trouble.
Right, let's get technical for a second because the details really matter here. As they were on approach to the International Space Station, which is the most critical phase of flight where you need absolute precision, the thrusters began to fail.
Williams details this in the interview, and it's chilling in its simplicity. She says they lost 5 thrusters.
5.
5. Now, for the listener who isn't an aerospace engineer, you might ask, okay, 5 thrusters out of how many? Why is that such a deal breaker?
Yeah, why not just switch to a backup? Why is the number 5 so significant?
Well, in spaceflight, everything is governed by what they call flight rules.
Okay.
And these aren't suggestions. These are rules written in blood, developed over decades of accidents and near misses. The core principle is redundancy.
Always have a backup.
You never fly without backups for your backups. If you have one failure, you switch to the B side. If the B side fails, you need a C side.
It's the belt and suspenders approach.
Exactly. But when you lose 5 thrusters, you are eating through your redundancy layers terrifyingly fast. You're approaching a state that they call loss of control authority.
Which is a very polite engineering way of saying spinning out of control.
Precisely. If you can't control your attitude, your orientation relative to the station, you can't dock. And if you can't dock and you can't deorbit safely, you are in a very, very bad spot.
Wow.
You are essentially a piece of drifting debris with people inside.
And this is where the astronaut temperament comes in. This is what fascinates me. If my car brakes failed on the highway, I'd be screaming. I'd be panic calling everyone I know.
Me too.
But Williams describes the cockpit atmosphere with Butch Wilmore. They see the warning lights. They see the thrusters going offline one by one. And their reaction is, oh, this is not so good.
Not so good.
Yeah.
It is the classic underreaction that you see in high-performance aviation. It reminds me of Neil Armstrong or Sully Sullenberger. It's not that they don't feel fear, it's that panic is useless.
Yep.
It consumes oxygen literally and metaphorically.
Williams talks about this concept of compartmentalization, and I think this is a takeaway for anyone, whether you're in orbit or just dealing with a crisis at work.
It's such a crucial mental model. If you look at the total sum of the failure, the ship is broken, we have no thrusters, we might be stranded, the mission is failing, the media is going to have a field day. You just freeze up.
Yeah, it's too much.
The scope is too big. The brain can't process that much threat at once.
So what do? You shrink the scope.
You shrink it down to the next 60 seconds. Williams said they didn't talk about getting home. They didn't talk about next week. They asked, how do we dock now?
Yeah.
They worked the problem that was immediately in front of them.
So practical.
They coordinated with mission control to bypass some of the automated flight rules. They rebooted the system. They fired up different manifolds. And they managed to limp the ship to the docking port.
They solved the 10-meter problem, not the 10-month problem.
Which is the only way you survive in that environment. If you try to solve the 10-month problem while you're trying to dock, you crash.
So they make it, they dock, they get on board, hug the crew. You'd think, okay, safe. But once they were on the ISS, the danger wasn't over. In fact, there was one specific incident she narrates in this interview that gave me actual chills. It wasn't the thrusters, it was the safe haven event.
This is a story that really highlights the fragility of the ISS. We see these pictures of the station. It looks massive, like a fortress in the sky.
Yeah, it looks so solid.
But we have to remember, it's really just a tin can in a shooting gallery.
So set the scene for us, because this sounds like something right out of the movie Gravity.
It is. It's the middle of the night, the crew's asleep, it's quiet, or, as quiet as the station ever gets. Suddenly the alarms go off.
Oh, man.
Ground control calls up with an urgent message. A satellite in a lower orbit has disintegrated.
Disintegrated, like just fell apart.
It either exploded due to a battery failure or collided with something else, we don't know. Regardless, it has created a massive debris field. And because of orbital mechanics, that field is expanding upward, intersecting the orbit of the space station.
And we've talked about space debris before. We're talking about shrapnel moving at 17,000 miles an hour.
Right.
A piece the size of a marble has the kinetic energy of a hand grenade.
Correct. And you can't dodge cloud. So the order is given. Safe haven.
What does that mean?
This is the emergency protocol, where every astronaut has to retreat to their specific lifeboats, the spacecraft they arrived in. They have to seal the hatches and prepare for immediate undocking. If the station gets hit and starts to depressurize, they have to leave instantly.
Williams says they had about 45 minutes before the debris field was calculated to cross their path.
45 minutes.
45 minutes. That is not a lot of time to pack up your life.
It's barely enough time to get your suit on and check the seals.
Now, here is the detail that makes this so human, so real. They have to get their suits on, they have to prep the ships, but before they split up to go to their separate capsules, the whole crew meets in one spot.
Yeah.
And of all the places on this $100 billion station, where do they meet?
The bathroom.
The bathroom.
It sounds absurd, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But pragmatically, it makes perfect sense.
I guess.
It's usually located in the central node of the station.
Uh.
Also, if you're about to be locked in a pressure suit for 24 hours or more in a tiny capsule, you use the facilities while you still can. It's just basic biology.
But the image Williams paints it's haunting. You have Russians, Americans, this international crew huddled by the waste compartment. It's not heroic in the traditional sense. It's just vulnerable.
It totally grounds the experience.
Dude.
They are hugging each other.
Yeah.
And the reality they are facing is so stark.
Yeah.
If they have to undock, they aren't landing together. They are scattering.
Right.
One ship, the SpaceX Dragon, is going to a splashdown off the coast of Florida. The Russian Soyuz is going to a hard landing in the steppes of Kazakhstan.
And that's assuming they make it.
That's the best case scenario. The worst case is that one of the ships takes debris damage on the way out.
And Williams mentioned the specific words they said to each other in that huddle.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll see you on Earth.
That one word, hopefully. It does so much heavy lifting right there. It just strips away all the glamour of space exploration.
Completely.
In that moment, they were just people facing the dark, acknowledging that they might be saying goodbye for the last time. It's a very raw moment that you don't usually hear astronauts discuss so openly.
Luckily, the debris cloud passed without a catastrophic hit. They didn't have to evacuate. But then the stuck narrative began to build back on Earth. The Starliner thrusters were deemed too risky to use for the return trip.
And this is where the media and the reality completely diverged. The headlines were screaming, "Hostages in space."
Prisoners of the ISS.
Exactly. But Williams is very clear. They were never hopeless, and they were never idle.
I think people imagine them just floating by the window, looking down at Earth, sighing, and waiting for a rescue.
Yeah, that's the movie version.
But she lists their daily tasks. It wasn't glamorous at all. Fixing toilets, moving cargo bags.
It's the operational mindset again. Utility keeps you sane. Williams calls herself a lab rat for other people's experiments. She used a great term, the right-hand man.
I loved that. She's a commander, a legend in the astronaut corps, but she was happy to be the assistant.
She knew she wasn't the primary investigator on these experiments, but if a colleague had their hands in a glove box, which is a sealed environment where you can't take your hands out, she would be the one handing them tools, managing the checklist.
She said she'd even scratch their nose if they needed it.
Right. It's about being useful to the tribe. In a survival situation, idleness is where that stuck feeling really comes from. If you are working, you are mission critical.
However, there was that period of limbo, the summer of 2024, the will they, won't they phase regarding the Starliner return.
That had to be the hardest part psychologically. The ground team kept saying, we're analyzing the data, you'll be home next week, then maybe next week, then we need a few more tests.
That's just living out of a suitcase for months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Williams and Wilmore are veteran test pilots. They understand these machines better than anyone. Williams said they realized the truth before NASA officially announced it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They looked at the thruster data, they looked at the risk probabilities, and they knew. Starliner is going home empty, we are staying.
And Starliner did leave, but that created a new, really bizarre problem. They were now stranded without a ride until the next SpaceX Crew Dragon could be reconfigured for them.
Right.
And I had not heard this detail before. There was a period where if an emergency happened, their lifeboat was a makeshift setup in a Dragon capsule that wasn't designed for them.
This is the pallet situation. It's wild. The SpaceX Dragon that was docked at the station only had 4 seats. Suddenly you have more people on board than you have seats.
It's like a game of musical chairs in orbit.
It is. So NASA had to improvise. They instructed the crew to rig a cargo pallet, literally the metal floor of the storage area, with foam cushions and straps.
Foam cushions for re-entry. We're talking about re-entry.
Imagine re-entering the atmosphere, plunging through a ball of fire, pulling 4 or 5 Gs, while you're strapped to a pile of foam on the floor of a cargo hold. Williams admitted it wasn't a professional standard.
That is the understatement of the year.
But it was a lifeboat. It highlights how much of spaceflight is actually improvisation. We think it's all sleek iPads and checklists, but sometimes it's duct tape, foam, and figure it out so we don't die.
She calls coming home a risky byproduct of the job. I found that phrase fascinating.
You too.
Not the goal, but a byproduct.
It's a stoic reframing. The mission is the goal. Science is the goal. Survival and return are desired, obviously, but they are technically secondary to the objective of exploration. It's a hard mindset to get your head around for us down here, where safety is the priority. For them, the mission is the priority.
Let's pivot to the experience of actually living there, because 286 days is a long time to live in tin can. And Williams gave us some incredible sensory details that you never see in the NASA brochures. Let's talk about the smell.
Ah, the smell of space. It's a question astronauts get asked constantly, but Williams got very specific. She said the station smells like us.
Which is a very nice way of saying body odor and food.
Well, yes. Think about it. There are no windows you can crack open for a breeze. The air is recycled constantly through HEPA filters, so it smells of humanity, antiseptic, and food. Specifically, she mentioned fish.
Salmon and tuna, of course.
Apparently, the smell of seafood pouches lingers in the ventilation system. If someone cracks open a tuna pouch in the Russian segment, you might smell it in a U.S. lab a few minutes later.
That's close quarters.
But there's another smell she mentioned, ozone.
Ozone? Like after a thunderstorm?
Sort of. It's described as a burnt steak or welding fume smell. It comes off the suits after a spacewalk. It's actually atomic oxygen from the vacuum clinging to the fabric. It's literally the smell of the vacuum of space.
Wow. And then we have to talk about the flatulence.
We do. It's science.
She was surprisingly candid about this. She said astronauts fart a lot.
It's a real physiological issue. She speculates it's the preservatives in the freeze-dried food, or maybe the fluid shifts in the body that mess with digestion. But the physics of a fart in microgravity are, well, they're complicated.
How so? What happens?
On Earth, we have convection. Heat rises. Gas dissipates. In 0G, there is no convection. Air doesn't circulate unless a fan is actively pushing it. So if you make gas, it just sits there.
It forms a bubble.
It forms a little bubble, a little invisible cloud.
And she said you can fly right through it.
Exactly. If you are following a crewmate down a narrow module, you are flying through their slipstream. If they emit gas, you are flying face first into a stationary cloud of methane.
Fly right through it. That's a phrase that's going to stick with me.
It's funny, but it's also a reminder of the complete lack of privacy. You are sharing every biological function with these people. You have to be okay with being human.
Speaking of things that go bump in the night, the sounds. I tend to think of space as silent. In space, no one can hear you scream and all that, but the ISS sounds loud.
It's a factory. Fans, pumps, CO2 scrubbers, they run 24/7.
That makes sense.
If the fans stop, you die, because a bubble of carbon dioxide will form around your head while you sleep. So the noise is life. But she described a specific category of sounds. The black part, noises.
This sounded like a horror movie setup when I read it.
It's thermal physics in action. The station orbits the Earth every 90 minutes. That means they experience 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every single day.
It's a lot of temperature swing.
It's a massive swing. When the sun hits the station, temperatures on the outside can hit 250 degrees Fahrenheit. When they go into the shadow, it plunges to minus 250.
So the metal is just constantly expanding and contracting.
Violently with every cycle. And she specifically mentioned the pressurized mating adapters, the docking ports, which are painted black.
And black absorbs heat.
The most heat.
Yeah.
So those parts expand the fastest and most dramatically. She describes loud bangs, metallic pops, and groaning creaks echoing through the hull.
That would be terrifying.
On her first mission, when she was sleeping alone in the forward module, she said it was terrifying. You're floating in the dark, and the walls start banging like an old haunted house. But it's an old house holding back a vacuum that wants to kill you.
It really paints a picture of the station as a living, breathing thing, not just a static object. She also talked about the visual experience. And I don't just mean the view of Earth. She talked about what happens when you close your eyes. The flashes.
The radiation flashes. This is a phenomenon almost all astronauts report, but it's rarely discussed in this much detail. You're lying in your sleep station, it's pitch black, eyes shut, ready to sleep, and suddenly zip. You see these little streaks of white light zipping across your vision.
And that's not your imagination. That's not a dream or something.
No, it is a high-energy cosmic ray, a subatomic particle from deep space, or the sun, physically passing through the hull of the station, passing through your skull, and striking your optic nerve, or the visual cortex of your brain.
Oh.
Your brain interprets that physical impact as a flash of light.
That is profoundly unsettling. You are essentially using your own body, your own eyes, as a Geiger counter.
It is. It's a stark, constant reminder that the Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere usually protect us from this. Up there, you are exposed. It's beautiful in a way, I guess, but it signals the invisible danger of long-duration spaceflight.
But the view outside, that's what makes the risk worth it. Since this interview was with an Indian host, Raj Shamani, she spent a lot of time describing the view of India specifically.
He did. She described the geography with such affection. The Himalayas, the sediment runoff from the rivers swirling into the ocean. But her description of the night side was poetic. She called the city lights of India a nerve connection.
Like a nervous system.
Yes, seeing the connectivity of civilization from above.
Yeah.
And she solved a little mystery for herself during this mission. She kept seeing these massive, intense clusters of light in the Arabian Sea at night, brighter than the cities on land.
And she didn't know what they were at first.
No. She was looking down, expecting darkness over the ocean, and instead seeing these galaxies of light. She eventually realized they were fishing fleets, squid boats, most likely using high-intensity green and white lamps to attract the catch.
So from 250 miles up, a fleet of fishing boats looks like a floating metropolis.
Exactly.
It's that overview effect, again, seeing the macro and the micro all at once.
And that perspective seems to have deeply influenced her internal state. You know, Sunita Williams is a legend. She holds records. She's commanded the ISS twice. But she opened up in this interview about something you rarely hear from people at her level: imposter syndrome.
I found that so validating. Here is one of the most experienced astronauts in history saying, I wasn't sure I belonged here.
She was very honest about her academic struggles. She wasn't the 4.0 student who just memorized textbooks easily. She said rote memorization was always hard for her. In the early days, she feared failing her check rides. She feared she wouldn't be able to handle the spacewalks, which are physically so grueling.
So how did she deal with that? Because she obviously succeeded.
Grit. Pure grit. Her philosophy was, put your head down and don't take no for an answer. She realized she was an operator, not an academic. She was good with her hands, good with flying, good with reactions. She leaned into her strengths, and she explicitly told the listener, "If I can do this, anyone can."
Wow.
It's not false modesty. She genuinely views her success as a result of persistence, not some innate genius.
That resilience seems to run in the family. She talked a lot about her father.
Her father's story is the classic immigrant arc, but with such specific, touching details. He came to the U.S. from India on a boat, and Williams shared this anecdote that he ate cheese for the first time on that boat. He thought it was plastic.
He didn't know what it was.
He'd never seen a processed cheese slice, but he ate it. He adapted. And that connection to her father was a huge part of her survival mechanism up there. In fact, it dictated her very first meal back on Earth.
The grilled cheese.
The grilled cheese. After 286 days of space, food, rehydrated shrimp, tortillas, mush, she didn't want a steak or lobster. She wanted a grilled cheese sandwich made on her husband's homemade bread.
That's amazing.
It was a comfort food that linked her directly back to her father's struggle and his journey. It's grounding.
She also mentioned carrying spiritual items with her. The Bhagavad Gita, and a statue of Lord Ganesha.
She has a very spiritual take on the cosmos. Her father has passed away, and she said something beautiful. She feels his presence in the universe, not just standing next to her as a spirit, but that he is now part of the star field, part of the nature she is observing from orbit. Space became a way to be closer to him.
But there is also a shadow that hangs over her career. The Columbia disaster. She was close friends with Kalpana Chawla, the astronaut who died when the shuttle disintegrated in 2003.
That was a defining moment for her generation of astronauts. Williams was preparing for her first flight when Columbia was lost. Imagine that. You were training to ride a vehicle, and that same vehicle disintegrates, killing your friends.
That would be. I mean, you might think that would cause hesitation. Or paralysis. I think I'd want to quit.
Exactly. But Williams says it created resolve. She said, "We've got to do this in their memory." She viewed her missions as finishing the work that Kalpana and the Columbia crew started. It's that concept of risk acceptance again. The danger isn't a reason to stop. It's a reason to be more precise. It's a reason to be better.
Let's talk about the return, because after 286 days, gravity is not your friend. We see the landing on TV, the parachutes, the desert, the smiling faces being carried out. But the physical reality of the next 48 hours sounds brutal.
It's a complete shock to the system. Williams described the neurovestibular shutdown.
Neurovestibular, that's the inner ear, right?
Yes. Your inner ear system tells you which way is up, and it helps you balance. In space, for 9 months, that system is useless. There is no up. So the brain essentially turns the volume knob on that sensor all the way down to 0. It just ignores the signals.
So what happens when you land?
When you hit gravity, the system doesn't just turn back on instantly. Your brain is still ignoring the signals from your inner ear. So if you turn your head, the whole world spins. She talked about severe nausea.
And the bobblehead effect. This is something I hadn't even considered.
We have all these tiny muscles in our necks that are constantly working, making micro adjustments to hold our heavy heads up against gravity. In space, those muscles atrophy or just forget their job because the head is weightless.
So she literally couldn't hold her own head up.
She said she felt like a doll. If she didn't consciously focus on holding her neck stiff, her head would just flop over. She had to relearn how to balance her own body weight.
And then there's the bathroom. Again.
We keep coming back to the bathroom, but it is the central logistical challenge of spaceflight. It's true.
She explained that you actually have to retrain yourself to go to the bathroom on Earth.
Right. Think about the mechanics. On Earth, gravity helps move things through your system and out. In space, you rely on air suction and different muscle contractions to push.
Oh, right.
When you come back to Earth, your body is confused. Do I push? Do I relax? Where's the suction? It takes days to normalize the most basic biological functions.
But amidst all the nausea and the wobbling, she describes some simple joys. The shower.
The sensation of water falling. In space, you take sponge baths. Water acts like a gel. It sticks to you. It doesn't flow. Feeling the weight of water running down your back is a luxury we take for granted every single day. For her, it was ecstasy.
And the smell of dirt.
The scent of earth. When the hatch opened in the desert, she said the smell of sagebrush and dust rushing into the capsule was overwhelming. After 9 months of ozone, antiseptic, and tuna, the smell of dirt was like the finest perfume.
So she's back. She survived the failed thrusters, the safe haven scare, the debris fields, the muscle atrophy. When she looks back at this marathon mission, what is the big takeaway? It wasn't about the technology, was it?
No. Her conclusion was surprisingly simple, and perhaps a bit unexpected for such a technical mission. She said, "Humanity is good.
That hit me hard. It feels so optimistic.
It is a powerful reframing. She said that while she was stuck, while she was in all that uncertainty, she knew that millions of people of different religions, different politics, different countries, were praying for her. She realized that despite all the noise and conflict we see on the news, fundamentally, human beings care about the survival of other human beings.
Start fighting over small things. It's the ultimate perspective check. It's just a shame you have to leave the planet to see it that clearly.
Sometimes distance is the only way to see the connection. When you look at Earth from that far away, you don't see borders. You just see a fragile blue marble that needs protecting.
She ended with a thought on life in the universe.
She did. She is convinced we aren't alone. She said, "We are just a little planet around one star." She believes the math is too vast for us to be the only life. Maybe not Star Wars aliens, but life. It leaves the door open for so much more exploration.
It leaves you with a sense of wonder. You know, thinking about this entire episode, I keep going back to that moment at the bathroom door, the safe haven moment.
It is the defining image of the mission for me. High-tech engineering meets basic human vulnerability.
It makes you think. If you had 45 minutes on the clock, if you were about to be scattered into the void, unsure if you'd ever come back, who would you hug? And what would be the last thing you said?
Hopefully I'll see you on Earth.
Hopefully. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Keep looking up.